some believers experience like really low moments and others don't. But for me, like I think the Lord knew I needed that. And so that was like the end of myself. I think I had always kind of put my worth in what guys thought of me growing up. And I didn't really recognize that until for the first time somebody broke my heart.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, I've been putting my identity in this. And I was just on rock bottom at that time. So that was really when the Lord just like took over my life and really showed me what an intimate walk with him was like. And just like my absolute need for Jesus came at that point. And I would say that was the moment when it's just never looked the same.
Welcome to this week's episode of the His Hill Podcast. My name is Kelly Daugherty, and I'm your host. I have with me today as a guest, Jewel Patterson. Jewel is one of the staff wives here. She was a student at Cape Henry Harbor, and she worked here on summer staff for a couple of years, I think it was. I know that we worked at least one summer together. And then now she's married to Connor, who you've heard several times on the podcast. He's been interviewed, and he's taken part in roundtable discussions as well as given devotions from history. So I thought it'd be a good idea to give Jewel a chance to come in and just share with us her story and how she came to Christ, what the Lord's doing in her heart, what it's like to be a staff wife. And so, Jewel, welcome here.
Thank you, Kelly. It's great to be here.
I appreciate you spending the time, and I know you're busy because you have all these kids and and other responsibilities, but you've been able to take some time out, and I appreciate that. Thanks. So, Jewel, now was I right? It was Cape Henry Harbor, right?
Yes, it was Cape Henry Harbor.
When were you a student there?
I was a student, I think it was back in 2011.
Okay.
2011.
Okay, so 10 and 11, and then you were here for the summer right after that, right?
I was,
okay.
Yeah.
And did you do another summer?
I did 3 summers in a row,
You did.
then I took 1 summer off, and then I was on staff. So I just have missed 1 summer.
Okay. And now your husband's in charge of summer camp.
He is. He's doing great.
Yeah,
I mean,
he is.
It was funny when we first came on staff, and he was the assistant camp director, and he did not want to do camp. And he was just like, I'm not going to do this. And then all of a sudden, when he switched to camp director, it was just like, he just did so well in it, and it's been fun watching him thrive.
That's great. And he does do a good job. I think he does a great job.
He does a great job.
Now, your year of Bible school, what was that like?
Man, okay. So, when I went to Bible school, I had just come, I guess a little bit of a background. I had just come from a year of high school where I basically was just like, I knew I wanted to be a Christian. I had accepted the Lord when I was like 9, I think. I knew in the long run I wanted to be a believer and walk the Christian life, but I just wanted a year of fun basically before then. And so I kind of went a little wild my senior year of high school and into that summer, literally leaning up to Bible school. And I had signed up to go. And I think it was more, I kind of wanted to get out of the house and just travel a little bit. And so again, I was just not making kind of stupid choices right up until like literally the day I left. And so, yeah, it was, I think getting there, I remember this moment where I was running. It's, beautiful on the island, and I had made it to my destination, and it was so beautiful. And it was just like, I felt like I wanted to rededicate my life to the Lord. And so I did. And yet in that moment, there was like a still small voice that asked me to surrender a few really small things. And I just couldn't do it. I kind of shoved it off as thinking like, this probably isn't the Lord. Looking back now, it definitely, was. And the enemy is always out for us. But yeah, I think because of that, just my not willingness to really surrender my life, I really didn't. I kind of stalled like all throughout my year of Bible school. I really didn't learn a lot. And I think it was because of that thankfully the Lord is good and gracious. So at the very end of that year, he gave me another opportunity, and he asked me to surrender a few things, one of them being coming to his hill.
Okay.
And I really wasn't a kids person. And so the idea of going to a summer camp was not up my alley. Of course, the idea of working as a volunteer without pay is not either up my alley. So it was a big one for me to obey that nudging and that calling. And so, yeah, it was really when I came here that my walk with the Lord kind of took off, probably because of just my willingness to obey him and surrender.
Okay. So when was it that you became a believer?
Yeah, I would say when I was 9 is when I accepted the Lord in my heart. And I come from a very loving family of my parents loved Jesus, and so it was a conversation I had with my dad, I believe. And I remember being excited about that. And most of my life growing up was pretty easy, very few challenges. And so, I just think it was just like in my high school years where I was like, I don't I know in the long run I want to be a believer, but right now I just kind of want to live for myself.
Okay. So you were a believer and you understood what that meant, but you were struggling with the commitment or the abiding and living the life
and surrendering everything. I was just like, I think I just didn't believe that his way was going to be better than mine. I'm a dreamer by personality. And so, when you have all of these dreams and you're excited about them, it's really just tough to lay them on the table. So that's kind of the story of my life, to be honest, is learning to surrender.
All right.
Yeah.
So now you're Canadian. Yeah. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And then when I was 16, we moved a little bit outside of that. But
and you come from a large family.
There's 7 of us. Okay. And it's funny, growing up, I did not like being from a big family. I think it was mostly, again, selfish reasons. I didn't get to do all the things I dreamed of doing, just because it was, difficult for my parents to take us to all the games and just do all the things. And so I think I didn't love it growing up. But now, my siblings are my best friends.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, good. Okay, now you came to His Hill.
I came to His Hill.
To work in the summer. And that's when I met you. Did you work on the tower?
No, I was a lifeguard.
That's right. I remember you being at the tower a lot. So you must have had a friend there or something.
Anna Mae. Shout out to Anna Mae Stern, probably her.
All right.
Yeah.
So what was that summer like? Because this was about the time that you said, there was a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
What was, that summer's a pretty intense thing for the summer staff. It's physically draining, it's mentally draining, and it's spiritually draining. So that's an interesting place to be and to be, for you and what you're saying, that this was the time where you kind of came to life in Christ. So what was that summer like?
Yeah. So I think during my Bible school year, a lot of the things that I had learned, they were good head knowledge stuff. And so it was mainly like being in maybe it was one of the first times I experienced hardship. Because again, it was like camp was not my scene in terms of being with kids. It just wasn't. And so I just remember that first week of camp, bawling my eyes out. I couldn't stop myself. It was all the time I was crying. It was just so hard for me. And so maybe it was just that hardship that really drew me to the Lord and kind of put those things that I had learned and made me realize I really need these things. I need Jesus. Right. Yeah. And I think most of my life, it was pretty easy growing up. So may have been just the first time I needed Jesus.
That's interesting. Jerry Benjamin, one of our guest speakers, once said that the only thing we need is Jesus. The problem is we don't realize he's the only thing we need until he's the only thing we have.
Totally.
And so, those times that we dread so much are actually the things that the Lord can bring about the most profit in our life.
Right. And I think that summer, so that is and you probably were going to ask this anyway, but that is the summer I met Connor.
Okay.
And so I think like once I met Connor, you know, feeling in love and all the, you know, good giddy feelings are coming in, and if that's well and good, and it may have stalled me a little bit as well, just because it was kind of going back to like, oh, like this is easier again. And not that I wasn't pursuing the Lord at that point, but it really wasn't till, the summer was kind of the start of that. And then it really wasn't till, the Thanksgiving conference after summer camp.
Okay. So you came back?
So Connor and I, after summer camp, we kind of kept talking. And then that Thanksgiving conference, Connor invited me to come out. We weren't official yet, but we were like basically official. And I was head over heels for him. And he ended things with me during that time.
Oh, really?
He did.
So
yes.
he invited you.
He invited me, and then he ended.
So he could end it.
Yeah. Isn't that sweet?
Oh, that is interesting. Okay.
But you know, fair to him, he did not know that he was going to do that when he invited me out. Okay. So yeah, but it really was actually at that moment, you know, I know that some believers experience like really low moments and others don't, but for me, like I think the Lord knew I needed that. And so that was like the end of myself. I think I had always kind of put my worth in what guys thought of me growing up, and I didn't really recognize that until for the first time somebody broke my heart. Okay. And I was like, wow, I've been putting my identity in this, and I was just on rock bottom at that time. So that was really when the Lord just like took over my life and really showed me what an intimate walk with him was like. And just like my absolute need for Jesus came at that point. And I would say that was the moment when it's just never looked the same. Okay.
Okay. So can you explain more of that? What was the Lord doing? Like, what was this journey like? You know, being brought, you know, being devastated, brought to the end of yourself. What was the Lord doing in your heart with this? Yeah. So,
I think, so I came back after that, and I was working for my dad, who has a steel manufacturing company. And so I was more so just in the front office. Pretty boring job for me, working at a computer, filing, just doing random odd jobs. And there were just like really like so many moments where I just remember being just face down on the dirty bathroom floor, just bawling my eyes out. Wow. Or, you know, I was really heartbroken, but I knew that my identity was being built up in Christ. And for me, it was thinking through like Hosea, I think it's chapter 2, when God takes Israel, the picture of bringing them into the wilderness, into the desert, and kind of like stripping them, showing their shame. Right. That's what it kind of felt like. Okay. And then him taking me and then building me back up in him, and showing my identity was in him, and no longer calling him Ishi but Bali, which is like no longer master but husband. That to me, that passage was huge for me. Feeling like the Lord was just stripping me of my false identity. Wow. And building me back up in him. And I just I remember feeling so like excited about this new identity that I had. And I felt so like I was worth so much. Okay. And I think one of the things that led me to come back to His Hill for camp was just realizing that there's so many other girls that feel this way, where they've put their worth in guys perhaps, or something else. But, and I just was excited to, like, Lord, use me. Like, if this is like that, you've done this work in me, use me with other women who've struggled with this, that I might just show them Christ in this. And so that's why I came back. 'Cause again, like, camp wasn't really my thing, but I was so excited to come back and just really share that message with the girls.
Isn't that interesting? When Christ becomes your life, the things you do become not, they become not so important. as much as being with him in the things that you're doing. Yeah.
100%.
And so what was the second summer like then, with a different perspective on life, really?
Well, it was funny because I think it was like, oh man, a month or two, maybe 3 months, I'm not sure, before summer started, I got wind that Connor was coming back. And I was like, no, Lord, why? I was so upset because I think I still liked him.
Yeah.
And it just felt like the Lord was just like rubbing this wound, like you're going to go back and he's going to be there and you're going to feel it the whole summer. And I was like, you know what? Okay, if this is how the Lord is going to use me, where I'm going to be in the very presence of hurt, and like maybe that is going to be my biggest testimony to these girls, is being in the middle of it. Thankfully, it was like, I think like a few weeks before I left, where I really like surrendered Connor, and I was like, okay, God, I'm going to be okay if I don't end up with him. So, I mean, the first week of summer was just quite comical. I was, in my new state of mind. I was like, okay, and I'm a pretty prideful person. Most people are, but I'm pretty prideful. And I remember my mom, right before I left, she was like, Jewel, honey, I know you're not going to want to talk to Connor, but you should at least be friends with him. And I was like, Mom, come on. You like him more than you like me. I know you do. And so with my mom's words in mind, I at least talked to Connor. Okay. That I just was pretty, off standish about it. But anyways, Connor was really apparently into me still. And really? And I had no idea. And so after that first week, he pulled me aside and he was like, Jewel, I have to talk to you. And so we talked, and, I poured out my heart to him and was like, hey, I really, really liked you. I'm over you though. Thank you for breaking up with me. The Lord has done all this in my heart. And Connor was like, Jewel, I still like you. And I totally understand if you don't want me to pursue you, but if you'd let me, I want to pursue you. So my life did a 180 in that moment. Was not expecting that from him. And I think at first I was I was just taken back, but I was willing to be friends with him and at least try being friends. And so it was pretty easy for him to gain back my trust. I think that was the biggest thing for me, because at the end of the day, I knew that he loved the Lord more than he loved me. And so it was you really aren't, there's not really trust you're needing to gain back. It was a really sweet summer.
Well, that sounds like this is a completely different kind of relationship than you've ever experienced before.
For sure. Yes.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because, by your own words, you weren't really in a place before to be in a relationship. Mm-hmm. And now it's funny that now that the Lord has you in a place to be in a relationship, it's not because you're about the person you're in the relationship with, nor is he the same with you. That's really interesting.
Yes, I was not expecting it, and I didn't need it. I had the Lord, and I really wasn't asking for a relationship at all. So yeah, came when I didn't expect it. And I mean, that summer was amazing. I was able to have the heart for the girls, and I wasn't working from a place of brokenness, which was nice. Yeah, but the Lord can use that too. So,
well, good. Yeah. Okay. So now I know the listeners are going to want to hear you finish this. So
sure.
So how did the two of you end up getting together then?
Yeah. So the end of that summer, Connor asked if he could come out to Manitoba. And because I just was pretty big on having my dad's blessing. Mm-hmm. So, so he came down, and I mean, my mom specifically, she'd never met Connor, but from day one, I mean, she just loved him.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, my family just all meshed really, really well with Connor. And, So we started dating officially at the end of that summer.
Okay, so you didn't start dating till the end of summer.
We didn't, and that was hard for sure. Like that was definitely had its challenges.
Sure.
But it was good, good timing. And I think for us, I mean, he was heading to CIU to do Bible teaching, and I was heading to the U of M to do kinesiology. And if you're going to if you're going to be in a relationship for a few years before you get married, I think long distance is great. It just kind of slows things down a little bit. So, I mean, we only did 2 years. Some people do a lot longer than that, but we did 2 years of long distance, and I loved it. I mean, it's like so contrary to what most people say.
What did you love about it?
You know, I think part of it's just my personality. I love missing people. It sounds weird. I love missing people. And there's just this anticipation of like, oh, when is he going to come next? I'm going to get to see him next. And I'm also very independent. And so it was kind of nice having my own space while I'm able to navigate this relationship. But yeah, I remember the beginning of that relationship, long distance. The Lord was just like, Jewel, like, I know everyone says it sucks, but I'm going to have you write down all the things that you love about it or that are going to be good about it. And I mean, there were so many, like communication was a really big one. And yeah, getting to, miss them. And I forget, honestly, a lot of them, but that was a really, really sweet 2 years of long distance. And I loved being at the U of M, which is a secular university. And I grew such a heart for just the non-believers that were there. And it really, I really thought that that's where my life was going to be headed, was towards just being in a secular kind of job.
Okay.
Just being a light in that. And so when Connor proposed to me, 2 years later, he was like, after he proposed, he was like, hey, by the way, I accepted a job for us at His Hill, which was mostly because the reason he didn't tell me is just because I love surprises. And so I didn't want him to tell me anything about when he was going to propose. And so he was super stressed out talking to my parents, trying to figure out how am I going to accept this job, because Charlie had called him and really wanted us both on staff. And funny enough, Charlie also, Charlie tries to be discreet, maybe, I don't know. He calls me one day and he's like, trying not to give away the fact that Connor's about to propose to me, but I was clueless. And he offers me this job to come to His Hill. And I'm like, I'm sorry, Connor and I are just dating. I'm not going to come to His Hill with Connor. That's ridiculous. And then he's like, yeah, but if you guys got married. And I was like, Charlie, what are you saying?
Oh my goodness.
So, it was maybe good that he prepared me, because I was so clueless. And so when Connor proposed, I was a little bit prepared.
Okay.
So that was surprising. And I definitely had to surrender the idea of coming to vocational ministry at first, for sure.
Right. There's a real theme here.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's, the Lord constantly brings you to this point of needing to surrender to what He has.
Yeah. I think I'm such a dreamer. I just I have all these big ideas, and at the end of the day, the Lord just knows me better than I know myself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you guys ended up getting engaged. When did you get married?
It was the summer of 2014, so in August.
Okay.
So that one summer that we missed was the summer we were engaged.
That's right. That was Arlene and my last summer.
Okay,
here.
right.
Yeah.
Yes, that was when all the staff was kind of changing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we moved right after camp, and then you guys moved in.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. I mean, you guys were, I think, in the next week or something like that.
I mean, it's so crazy for me to think back at that time and how it's the Lord moves some people out and then some people in. I remember thinking about that, and just, it was a sweet thought to realize the Lord just knows what He's doing with everybody.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So, okay, you guys came on staff. Yeah. Now you actually had a position on staff when you first got here. What was your job?
So I was supposed to take over camp secretary.
Okay.
And I'm being from Canada. We were working on my green card stuff. And so I trained for the job for about a year. And then my visa got denied. And then I trained somebody else for the job for about a year. And so I was doing it for about a year, training and then training somebody else. So I never actually took the job.
So plans got changed on you again.
They changed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And how that, what was that like?
Yeah. As soon as I came to His Hill, I found out very quickly that the Lord had me here not for the work itself in the office, but just like the heart that I grew for discipling women was just like, I had never known that kind of a desire before. And so again, like, as I've said, as I've, surrendered my life to the Lord, even in my desires and my passions, like, it's like, oh, like I want to be in a secular place. And I surrendered that. And then the Lord brought me here to a vocational ministry. And then it was like tenfold. He unleashed this like desire to disciple. So it was very quickly that I realized that that's why I wanted to be here. And I was excited to be here for that reason. And so it really wasn't a big deal when it all fell through.
Good.
Yeah.
Great.
He'd already thankfully prepared me before then.
Okay, so you guys are newlyweds, and you're thrown right into a discipleship ministry, which means there's very little privacy. To me, that's an interesting time to have something like that happen. I mean, you're newly married, and there's all these people in your life, in your house, in your car, everything. Was that difficult for you?
I actually did not. It was not difficult the first few years. I think the Lord really, I don't know, maybe because Connor and I did long distance for so long, and so we were just so excited to be together. And I remember one of my prayers when we got married was that we would be able to essentially just like show Christ to the people around us. And I think there was a lot of marriages that I saw growing up that just were distasteful to me in terms of the love just felt really lost in the marriage, and that spark felt lost. And so I just really desired like that relationship with Connor that resembled Christ in His church. And to me, it just was like, if that's what God is like making marriage a resemblance of, then like it has to be more than these marriages that I've seen. And so one of my prayers was that we'd be able to, of course, like do that, but then also be that light for other people to see. And so the fact that like 50 students come in and out every year is 100% answer to that prayer. Obviously, like marriage isn't easy and you go through ups and downs, but it's been sweet to see the Lord working in that. For me, I feel like it was harder after the first, I think it was like 3 years, maybe. I started to get a little bit sick, and it was nothing serious. It was just like constant fatigue and internal stuff that was going on. And so that was probably like Connor and I almost left at that point because of me, and just I wasn't doing well. So that was a tough time, but never because of privacy issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then what are the ups and downs for you at, being here on staff?
Yeah. I think right now the biggest down that I've seen that's hard for me is being myself, because I am in a place where I'm in a place of leadership, and it's a Bible school, and people are looking at me. I think it's hard for me to really just let go and be myself, because I'm just worried about what other people are thinking. Having kids has been helpful to actually bring that full circle, because you can't really be two-faced around your kids. And so that's probably been a harder thing. Another thing would maybe be just like the time, like when you're in ministry, you're just working, like you're never completely off. And so not really feeling like I could necessarily have, it's like I just felt very selfish of Connor's time specifically. Like I want him to be with me all the time, and I don't want, to always share him. And so I guess that aspect of privacy maybe wouldn't be a difficult challenge.
Which is a real big struggle, I would think, during summer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Summer, it's hard for sure. And I think when I was doing like camp secretary stuff, we were kind of working together.
Yeah.
And so that was a little bit different maybe, which is why it wasn't as difficult. But yeah, especially once I started having kids, that became more challenging, is not having him around as much. And he is a one-track minded person. And so it is difficult for him too, to, have his mind at home and in the ministry. And so I think what we're really excited for, and actually somebody within Torchbearers told us this when we were struggling a lot with that, was that you can take two different mindsets when you're in vocational ministry. When it comes with family, you can either try to segregate it and have like, this is my ministry and this is my family time, and separate it, or you can blend it and you can do everything together. And for us, blending it has been everything. It's been so helpful. Obviously, like we still need, we still take time, just the two of us, but, and just with our family. But for the most part, we try to do ministry together, and that's been really helpful.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And, being a mom.
Yeah.
What's it like being a mom?
Okay.
And I watched Arlene with this, so I know some things, but I want you to be able to explain it yourself. What's it like being a mom and being on staff, with the responsibilities that come with that, and just having, all these people always around your kids?
Yes.
What's that like?
Man, well, Kelly, I mean, first and foremost, you should know that being a mom was never my dream. That was like, that was like at the bottom of the list. And so that was like a huge, like just being a mom in general was like a huge, probably my biggest thing to surrender when I got pregnant. And that wasn't until like 4 years after we were here. So I mean, I was like in my own world that first 9 months when I was pregnant with Brielle. A lot of things that I had to work through, and didn't really believe when people told me like, oh, it's so great. And I was like, you're lying. I know you're lying. And, I think it was the last month of that pregnancy, and I get really sick during my pregnancy. So it's like also a physical, hardship for me. But the last month of that pregnancy, the Lord was just like, Jewel, I need you to believe truth right now. It says in the Bible that children are a blessing. I need you to believe that that's true, instead of what you're hearing and what your body thinks and what your head thinks and your heart. And so I did. I believed it. And sure enough, when Brielle was born, I mean, I was on cloud 9 for, the next 7 months. And then I got pregnant again, and then I got sick again. And then we do that cycle 3 times. So, I think having kids, I mean, it's obviously changed my world, but it is shocking to me that I can sit in front of you today and tell you that being a mom has become my biggest dream. Like that is definitely my biggest surrender, and just the biggest thing that the Lord has just like, it's been such a blessing to me. And I think it was actually when Brielle was born, our first daughter, that Connor and I realized how much we wanted to be at His Hill. Because I mean, there was multiple things that happened in a short span of time. But, I think raising your kids in a place like Torchbearers is very safe. There's so many, it's like mom and dad can love Jesus, but all these cool teenagers love Jesus. I mean, that is really special.
Yeah.
And already seeing how much every single year, how much the students love our kids is just beyond blessing. Yeah. And the Lord knew my capacity. I feel like I have a pretty low capacity as a mom, even though I'm obsessed with my kids. But I think like all the help that comes with being here, and just how I can kind of do life with with these students is just so special. And especially because right before one of the things I had to work through is, I felt like once I had kids, I wouldn't be able to disciple. I wouldn't be able to, do that anymore. And so I was so close to being like, Connor, we have to leave. We have to let somebody else come in because these girls need discipleship during this time. This is a discipleship program. Like, they need this, and I won't be able to give it to them. And it was just so sweet how after she was born, it was like Brielle became a magnet to where all these girls were now approaching me and wanted to hang out more. And it became so easy to just, I think girls become more comfortable when you kind of just do life with them first anyway. And so, having kids here has been the best thing.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting? Because, thinking about our kids growing up here and watching staff kids from all over the world, all the centers, you see the same thing where students are pouring into the life of your kids and complimenting, what you're doing with your children. And it's really an affirming thing. It's a blessing for our kids to grow up in this atmosphere. Yeah. And I think it's interesting too that you say that, the thing that you dreaded and had to surrender, the biggest surrender you said, is also the very thing the Lord used to continue his ministry in you in a way that you had not seen before. No. Yeah. So, it's just interesting how we do, I think a lot of people can identify with what you're saying because there's so many things that come into our life that we struggle with. Yeah. Not this, Lord. Yeah. But it's the very thing we do need, and truly we can say that God does cause all things to work together for good. Yes. Amen. And then the next verse in Romans there says that good is conforming us to the image of his son. So with each one of these things, something that's been consistent with what you've said is that, the Lord has shown himself. He's shown himself. Yeah. He's shown himself. Absolutely. That's great. Okay. So you told us a little bit about maybe the lows. Yeah. And you have even given us some of the highs. Yeah. But is there anything in particular that you'd like to share with what, the highs of being on staff?
Oh man. Yeah. So, I mean, definitely the having people pour into my kids has probably been one of the highest things. Other than that, I think living in community can have highs and lows in it for sure. But recently I've just, been really blessed by, we're constantly being taught scripture, even though I'm not sitting in classes, right? Like, I just feel like with the students, they're constantly talking about it too. And so there's just, it would be really, I'm not even sure how to explain it, but it's just been so sweet to live in community. Okay. With everybody. And I think too, like for Connor, having him, he didn't grow up in a Christian background. And so it's been really special to see him in this kind of community too, and have those people in his life as well. So I think just all around for all of us, we feel very protected from the Lord being here. And who knows, maybe one day he'll move us out. But right now, we're so excited to say that we're here and we want to be here long term. Like, this is where we're at. This is where we feel the Lord has called us to. And so we're just really excited for that.
Yeah, I know what you mean, that it is special to be a part of a community like this. I know the college I graduated from contacted me after I had been here for a while and wanted some input. They wanted to start a 1-year program like Torchbearers. And they said, so what kind of input do you have for us? And I told them, you can't do it. And I'm sure they really appreciated that. And I explained to them that, you don't understand. The strength of Torchbearers is that it's a discipleship ministry. So we're small campuses. Yeah. And we have an advantage with that in that we can, get to know the students. They're in our homes. Yes. We're like you said, doing life with them. It's not just we see them from 9 to 5 type thing. And so, it's because of that, it's very intense.
Yeah.
Because the relationships develop quickly and deeply, and you're in each other's business.
Yeah.
In a positive way, because it's just so consistent, like encouraging one another to Christ.
Yeah.
Like, no, like you said, you need to surrender this, and what Arlene used to tell the girls is that you need to give your yes to Jesus. And it can be pretty intense. So it goes way beyond what happens in the classroom.
Totally.
And
100%.
yeah, it really does.
Well,
and
most of the students will say that too. That a lot of their favorite times is just life on life stuff.
Yes. Yeah. The classroom is good. It's positive. It's profitable. But we come out of that chapel.
Yeah.
And then we're really challenged now to live this.
Yeah.
And, so it is, for the students, there's 9 months of this, and it is an incredible opportunity.
Yeah.
I think maybe a little bit of maybe a snapshot of what heaven will be like.
I think so. I think so. And I think a lot of people argue this is a bubble. And
I hate that.
Yeah, you're not in the real world.
Yeah.
And I get there's an aspect of community that I'm with that, not everybody is with, but something that Connor and I actually, we miss and that we wish that we could be a part of, which is a little bit harder here, is being a part of a local church and really thrive using that
Plugged
as
in.
your community. And I think that's somewhere that Connor and I have really struggled with, because we have a community here, is not being plugged into your local church. And really if, I think the dream for people who live outside of Torchbearers is just being somewhere close to a church is ideal, and being able to be in that kind of community and plugging in with each other and discipling each other.
Right.
And so, I think one of the harder parts of being here can be because you're so close knit and you're living and everybody sees every part of your life. It can be sometimes scary asking for advice to somebody, or finding, somebody to get counseling with, just because it's but they just know everything about me. They almost know too much, but I think it's just so special to be part of something that, you're in such tight community. People know you, people can call you out.
Yeah.
And so I think, you can find that in a church.
Sure. I know that's, we were here for 23 years. And leaving, that was, then we were thrown into that too. Okay, where do we find this? And then you find, you know what? It's the church that the Lord has given us, not His hill.
Right.
It's the church.
Amen. Yeah.
And so this is where we need to be.
Yeah.
And have found, it's been a real blessing, to be able to plug in, and hopefully that's what the students are coming to realize when they leave here now. Plug into the church.
Plug into the church.
Yeah, that's plug into the body of Christ and be active there. Yeah. So that's good. And certainly because it's been so intense here, there often is a transition time.
Oh, 100%.
Where they have to make that transition and understand that this is where I need to be.
100%.
Well, that's good. Okay, so now I really appreciate it that you've talked about how the Lord's worked in your heart a real desire to disciple women, and so as we come toward the end of our this episode, I'm just wondering, if a young girl walks into your house and she's what is it that you want them to hear you say and see you live, that what is it? What is it that you would want to?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think I really would just love people to see their need for Jesus, and when they come into our home specifically, I mean, my life is pretty chaotic right now with 3 littles, 3 and under. And so they see me cry. I mean, they see me laugh. They just see me go through. It's like a little snapshot of what a lot of people's emotions don't do in like a lifetime, right? They get to see that in such a short period of time. And I'm, and this is the same, that's true for my kids, is that just like as I'm going through these emotions, and I think women in general can be pretty emotional. And so just seeing how we can go through circumstances in life, and they can be hard, they can be good, and yet through all of that, you have a firm foundation and you have Jesus. And despite your emotions, what you're feeling, that you have truth. And like everybody as a believer, or no, everybody who isn't even a believer, it's like we have these coping mechanisms with, emotions and how to deal with hardships. And as the believer, like we have Christ, and we are able to, yes, like I want them to feel low. Like I think of the Psalms, I think of David going through like really hard things, and his emotions are really low, and just him, saying things like, God, where are you? And then yet always at the end of that Psalm, there's always like a truth factor. It's like, but like you are good and you are God. Yeah. And I think as women, especially, there's just, with all those emotions, again, this is true for men too, but I do mostly disciple women.
Right,
so,
right.
Just having that truth of your feelings are just going to be wavering. And yet at the end of the day, you have Christ.
I appreciate that. As you were talking about that, it just made me think of Paul saying, for me to live is Christ.
Yes.
And that's really what we want the students to understand. You don't have to be in a vocational ministry to be living the life of Christ.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, you can be in one and not be living the life of Christ. Right. But really, Paul said that as a prisoner, not as a preacher standing in a pulpit. And so, I just think about this whole interview and what you've been talking about is the Lord bringing you to this reality that now for you to be a mother, to be a wife, to be on staff is Christ.
Amen.
And really, that's what we want the students to see here and know, that wherever the Lord has us, whatever He unveils before us, that's where we need to be, because that's where He is, and that's where His life will be made known and abundant to us.
Well, and one of my favorite things I think about all the time is when Paul and Silas were in prison and they're praising, right? And to me, that is just like, that's like my life goal, is just to be able to live in hardship and yet to be praising the Lord. And that can be my truth and like these girls' truth and my kids' truth. It's like, that's crazy that you can live in a hard circumstance, but also know complete joy. And so I'm excited to be able to, keep on giving that message, because I'm living in the thick of it.
Yeah, you are. So. Well, praise the Lord.
Yes.
Well, Jewel, thanks for the time. I appreciate it. And thank you for just, being open and also for, being clear that, that life has its difficulties, but Christ is faithful in all of those things.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly, for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the His Hill podcast. You've been listening to our host, Kelly Doherty, along with Jewel Patterson. We hope you appreciate hearing from Jewel today and how God has worked in her life. Applications for the 2023-2024 Bible School year have been coming in since registration opened in November, and it looks like we'll have another full year come this fall. If you or someone you know is interested in applying for our Bible School program, please head on over to our website to get the application process rolling. We are thankful for those who have applied thus far and look forward to seeing who God will bring here in September. Thanks again for listening to the His Hill podcast today. Remember to keep your eyes fixed on Christ, alumni. He is our firm foundation, and with Him we can stand secure. I'm Lizzie, and we'll see you next week.